All right, so welcome to the Lakeville Area Schools Board of Education meeting. I am Judy Kelleher, Board of Education Chair, and the meeting is called to order, and I invite the audience members to please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So thank you. And at this time, we're just going to take a moment of silence. This evening, we would like to hold a moment of silence in remembering Sydney Koner, sophomore from Lakeville North High School. Sydney passed away on April 9th. She is survived by her parents, her brother, and her extended family and friends. So please join us in a moment of silence in her honor. And thank you. And the following board members are in attendance. We have Kathy Lewis, Cinta Schmitz, Terry Lind, David Anderson, Robin Richards, and also in attendance is Superintendent Michael Bauman. And our executive cabinet members, we have Dr. Emily McDonald and Stephanie Cass present tonight. So with that, good news, Superintendent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Start off with academic accomplishments. First, want to say we're proud to report that the four-year graduation rate for students in Lakeville area schools increased last year, according to the data released by the Minnesota Department of Education. The 2021 school year was the first full school year impacted by COVID-19 pandemic, lest I remind everybody. The district's overall graduation rate increased 1 point to 95%, and it remained well above the state graduation rate. I think that's a testament that shows the hard work of our students and our faculty across the entire system. Congratulations to Lakeville South High School 11th grade student Megan Flaherty for being awarded a Rising Star honor in the 2022 Minnesota Aspirations in Computing Awards. She is one of 110 high school students in the state to receive an honor of their technology skills, achievements, and aspirations. The Minnesota Aspirations in Computing program inspires and empowers high school students to become the next and best Minnesota-grown technology talent. Congratulations to Lake Marion Elementary STEM teacher Kimberly Menard, who has been named a finalist for the Presidential Awards for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching. The awards recognize teachers who have deep knowledge of the subjects they teach and the ability to motivate and enable students to be successful in those areas. If selected as a Presidential Award winner, Mrs. Menard will receive a certificate signed by the President of the United States and receive a trip to Washington, D.C. for an award ceremony. Congratulations and good luck to Mrs. Menard. Some athletic accomplishments. Congratulations to this year's St. Paul Area Athena Award recipients from Lakeville area schools, Greta Engels and Georgia Demmel. Every year, the Athena Awards program recognizes a school's most outstanding female senior student athlete for their athletic achievements. Greta Engels is a Lakeville North's 2021-2022 Athena Award winner, excelling in many high school sports including Nordic ski, cross country, lacrosse, track and field. Georgia Demmel is Lakeville South's 2021-2022 Athena Award winner, excelling in tennis with many achievements including 94 total career wins, the third highest in the history of Lakeville South. Again, congratulations to both of these outstanding Lakeville area student athletes on all of their achievements. Congratulations to Troy Sargent, assistant coach of the Lakeville South boys basketball team. He was named the 2021-2022 Assistant Coach of the Year through the Minnesota Basketball Coaches Association. Some activities accomplishments. Congratulations to Lakeville North Band students Anna White and William Ars for earning spots in the Minnesota Band Directors Association All-State Band. Anna and William won their spots through an audition against students from all over Minnesota. Their performance was held April 9th at Edina High School. Staff appreciation resolutions. Tonight, the Board of Education will consider 3 staff appreciation resolutions for the following groups: our paraprofessionals, volunteers, and administrative support professionals. Lakeville Area Schools recognizes April 18th through the 22nd of April 2022 as Paraprofessionals Appreciation Week. As you know, our paraprofessionals provide a variety of services and supports to help our students achieve success across the district. Lakeville Area Schools recognizes April 18th through the 22nd as Volunteer Appreciation Week as well. Volunteers provide essential support to our over 11,500 Lakeville area students and their families and over 1,500 employees. And Lakeville Area Schools is recognizing April 25th through the 29th as Administrative Support Professionals Appreciation Week. Our administrative support professionals are essential to keeping our district operating, which supports the success of all of our students. Thank you to our paraprofessionals, our volunteers, and administrative support professionals for your dedication and commitment to our district, our students, and our families. Donations, summary of acceptance of gift donations resolution. A total of $31,016.90 in donations of cash and/or materials were donated throughout all district locations from the following donors: Wagner family, OHE families, I'll say that again, Oak Hills Elementary families, Christina Huddleston Elementary, Parent-Teacher Organization, Rachel Camley, Ship Grant from Dakota County Public Health Department, Devon Christensen, Eastview Elementary Parent-Teacher Organization, the Blackbowed Giving Fund Your Cause, the Optimist Club of Lakeville, Elko New Market Chamber of Commerce, Kopp Family Foundation, Lakeville Historical, John F. Kennedy Parent-Teacher Organization, and Richard and Joyce Ringheisen. Details of donations can be found in the board packet under the consent agenda. That is good news and donations, Madam Chair.
All right, and thank you. So we move to public comment, and this is where individuals can address the Board of Education with concerns and issues. And it is not intended to be used for a platform to address the audience or for political posturing. Speakers will have up to 3 minutes, and I will let each speaker know when they have 30 seconds left, so they can finish in their allotted time. Deanna, the first speaker, please. Yes, right up here, please.
Need a mic, I have a loud enough voice.
You will talk right into there, so it'll get caught on our audio.
Okay, well, my name is Pam Rogers. I have been an elementary teacher or a substitute teacher for 50 years. Getting to the point, where I still want to be one. Anyway, I hope I don't start to cry. On October 11th of 2021, I was approached by Mr. Stevens, who is a director of Learning Center or something in JFK. I don't have anything to do with him because I'm a substitute teacher, not. He came into a room that I was subbing in, and they were gone to specialists, and so he asked me if he could come in and visit with me. And I said, sure, come on in, sit down. He told me that, and I don't know when this happened, he said there were a few teachers out in the hallway one day, and I was never given their names or when this happened. Mr. Stevens said that I had put my hand on his back, and that made him very uncomfortable. I told him I did not know this made him uncomfortable. I apologized profusely, said that I was very sorry, and it would never happen again. I assumed that that was settled between the two of us.
Pam?
Yes.
Can I, so, because this can be bordering on the line with data privacy and so forth, have you filed this complaint at the school level, or your concerns at the school level?
They wouldn't let me.
Okay, so can we ask that, I know Deanna has your information, and we'll have the administration follow up with you, and you can sit down and have this conversation privately with somebody from the administration? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would do that.
I would appreciate that,
I
so.
just wanted to tell you,
Yep.
though, for
And-
one thing, because I can no longer teach or sub in the Lakeville district because of all these things, I do have another job that I am subbing. And the first thing I asked them before I accepted the job was if they belonged to Teachers on Call. And the principal said, no, we take care of our own problems.
So, again, we'll follow up with you and have that. Thank you. Thank you. Yep. Yep. So we'll, Deanna, all right. Deanna, is there more public comment? Okay, then we'll move on. Thank you so much. Yes, you're welcome. And so with that, we move into any agenda additions? Any agenda additions? No? And then we seek approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move.
And we have a motion by Cinta Schmitz, and is there a second?
Second.
We have a second by Terry Lind. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Now we move to consider approval of the consent agenda. Does anybody wish to pull anything from the consent agenda? Jack, can you Jack, will you just recess for just a second, please?
That's allowed?
We're on.
All right, so does anybody wish to pull anything from the consent agenda for further discussion? All right, seeing none, is there a motion for the consent agenda?
So moved.
I have a motion by Director Lewis. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Director Schmitz. Any comments? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And then we move to the report for this evening, which is the elementary science update. Good evening. Can you pull that a little closer? Or I don't know if it can be or not.
We talked about this before, Judy. Make sure the microphone-
She just doesn't want to stand there close to Paul.
Thank you.
Understandable.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Good evening, Executive Cabinet, members of the board, Superintendent Bauman, Madam Chair, and our listening audience. With me this evening is Paul Helberg, principal of Cherry View Elementary School, and he serves as our principal representative for our district science leadership team. It is our great pleasure to be able to share with you an update as it relates to the elementary science standards review process. So in accordance with the Minnesota statute, Minnesota academic standards are reviewed and revised on a 10-year cycle, with one content area of the academic standards updated each year based on the schedule approved by the Minnesota legislature. As you can imagine, the schedule has been revised due to the impacts of the pandemic. And so currently, our district science leadership team, which is comprised of one primary, one intermediate teacher across all of our elementary buildings, as well as our STEM leaders, in reviewing these newly updated 2019 academic standards. School districts, as you know, are required to implement the standards so that all students have success to high-quality content and instruction. So our work that we're going to be visiting with you tonight really is about a new conceptual framework looking at science instruction very differently than maybe some of you had experienced science instruction when you were in a K-12 system. We'll be talking a little bit about our science review process and the tremendous amount of work that our educators have done across our system. I can't give enough of a shout out to those teachers, their commitment and passion to the area of science, not only to this work, but of course to their students and families. We'll also talk a little bit about the elementary science framework, and then what are our look-fors to ensure guaranteed and viable curriculum as it relates to science instruction at the elementary level. And then we'll talk about what that implementation timeline looks like now that it's been revised by the state of Minnesota, and then resource adoption and our next steps. So I'm going to turn it over to Paul, and he's going to visit with you a little bit about how this shift has occurred.
Thank you, Sandy, and I'll adjust as we go up and down here. So, good evening as well from myself. As Sandy pointed out, throughout all of the work that Teaching and Learning Department does, we have principals that do their best to serve on each of the content areas, and this has been, as Sandy knows, a passion of mine as I focus around getting our STEM program off the ground and thinking about the work that they had started years ago and really fostering critical thinking, problem-solving skills. And so when we were looking at the science standards and revising those, I think Sandy and I probably exchanged a glance across the room, not in a weird way, but said, I think you should be part of the science committee. And I said, absolutely, I'd love to continue to do that work. And the work that the teachers have done is phenomenal. And you'll get a little bit of a glance of that this evening. You probably can't get the full scope of the work that they've done, but hopefully you'll get a flavor for that. The district science leadership team started this journey prior to COVID and have continued their work throughout this school year. And during their time together, the team had been engaged in professional learning that supports the instructional shifts that align with the new, at this point, 2019 Minnesota Academic Science Standards. These standards are aligned to the Next Generation National Science Standards Framework, also known as NGSS. Major shifts within the new standards include the introduction of the concept of phenomenon and three-dimensional learning. Scientific phenomena are occurrences in the natural and human-made world that can be observed and cause one to wonder and ask questions. Phenomena do not have to be phenomenal. Often, simple tasks, when looking at them through scientific eye, can elicit and questions in students and adults. What is phenomenon? Builds conceptual understanding through integration, doing to understand versus doing to do. So an inquiry-based on approach and process learning, and figuring out and trying to figure out the why. Not topic-based, figuring out like a scientist, not learning about, but open inquiry versus phenomenon. So the three dimensions, a learning approach, describes a vision of what it means to be proficient in science. Science is no longer seen as a body of knowledge of fact, trivia, or rote memorization. The new standards recognize that while specific knowledge of content is important, facts and memorization fall far short of what's required to do science and engineering. Equally important is the ability to create analyze, and evaluate using three-dimensional learning because science is not static. Scientists are constantly discovering new knowledge or new ways of looking at existing knowledge. Therefore, students must be able to understand scientific concepts, use those concepts to answer questions and solve problems. Students must also recognize how those concepts connect with other concepts in other science fields. Three-dimensional learning essentially shifts science education utilizing science and engineering practices to actively engage students in science learning, integrating these with disciplinary core ideas and cross-cutting concepts and explaining phenomena and or designing solutions to problems to drive student learning. Within those three dimensions of learning, you'll notice three key components which we'll outline for you this evening. The first component is the science and engineering practices. SEP are the same skills that scientists use to answer questions and engineers use to solve problems in the real world. By stressing the importance of these practices, the new standards are emphasizing that science is not just isolated facts. When students engage in the practices, they learn through performance tasks how scientific knowledge develops by working through the same practices that scientists and engineers use. This participation also creates a more meaningful learning experience because students are doing science, which in turn better prepares them for the student expectations within the new academic standards. Next are the cross-cutting concepts. Cross-cutting concepts are those concepts that apply across all scientific disciplines. They provide students with an organizational framework based on behavior and function that connects ideas from different scientific disciplines. These concepts play an important role in three-dimensional learning. For example, students can see how energy and matter are essential to understanding life sciences, but also for understanding physical science, earth science, and engineering. And finally, the disciplinary core ideas, the CI, form the basis of what most educators would consider science content knowledge, also known as scientific facts. These core ideas are grouped into four content domains: physical sciences, life sciences, earth sciences, along with integrated areas of engineering, computer science, nature of science, and contributions of American Indian tribes.
All right. This slide represents the new vision for science instruction. As you can see in the right-hand column, these strategies represent the type of instruction that we would expect to see as we shift towards the implementation of the new 2019 Minnesota Academic Standards. A couple of the shifts included the practice of students conducting investigations, solving problems, engaging in collaboration and discussing with peers, along with students engaging in the practice of evidence-based arguments and reasoning by generating claims backed by evidence and supported by a rationale or reasoning. And these pieces, as you look on the right-hand side, nestle nicely with the expectations in our other content areas, such as the ELAs and math. And this is a huge piece for us at the elementary level, is to be looking at these content areas through an integration lens. As you know, elementary teachers are generalists who really have 6 to 7 content areas, and we're looking for ways to find that integration between those content areas. As a result of the statewide expectations for school districts to implement the Minnesota Science Standards, the district science leadership team has been engaging in a robust standards review process. And this process really supports the implementation of those instructional shifts that Paul had mentioned and those key concepts of the new standards. It also supports teachers in the review of these updated state standards and benchmarks, And this includes taking a deeper dive into these benchmarks and unpacking them to the student learning target, as well as determining the level of rigor, which we call DOK, or depth of knowledge. And we also, during this process, have designed proficiency skills that support us with our assessment development, and then identifying and creating those common assessments. During this process, we also seek ways to integrate digital learning and culturally responsive teaching strategies within science instruction. Just recently, we had the Equity Service Department with Lydia and Kachin come and visit with our district science leadership team, and then look particularly at the work that we're doing with Zaretta Hammond and the instruction with science. Later on in our presentation, we will be reviewing what our selection process is for the core resources. On this particular slide, what you'll see is a representation of the elementary science belief statements. As part of our journey, the district science leadership team crafted these belief statements and an instructional elementary science framework that Paul will be visiting with you about in just a moment to support the implementation of these robust standards. These documents are grounded into that best practice and research and supports the new conceptual framework that we would expect to see in the classrooms as it relates to science instruction. Highlighted and bold, you will see some of our key beliefs, and they include practices that support asking questions and solving problems to build conceptual understanding, making connections to real world through authentic investigations, as Paul had mentioned, through phenomena, and engaging in evidence-based explanations and collaborative discussions, and connecting learning through a multidisciplinary and integrated approach. And Paul will talk a little bit more as we move on to the next science, as we consider integration at the elementary level.
So on this slide, you'll see this represents the elementary science instructional framework. This framework outlines the importance of the collaborative work of PLCs in supporting multimodal approach, embedding the three dimensions of learning and phenomena and teaching practices within science instruction. Should also note as part of this process and Sandy's department in teaching and learning, this slide represents each of the different content areas. So the formatting of this is familiar for teachers, and Sandy's just figured out some really clever color coding so that teachers can tell the difference between math, literacy, science, and as we keep working through this process of adoption as standards come along. On this slide, the team has been busy creating the district-wide elementary science progression of learning. And again, this is similar to what work that has been done through the Sandy's office, elementary teaching and learning, and this represents a familiar look for teachers also. So as we've moved through this process with literacy and math and now into this with science, again, this is a document that will be familiar for teachers to be able to work their way through as well. This key guiding document identifies what it is that students need to know and do and provides teachers with a coherent instructional framework within the progression of learning. Specific benchmarks have been identified as the responsibility of the classroom teacher, STEM specialists, and or benchmarks that STEM specialists support the classroom teacher through in an integration model that we've been working through. In addition, teacher leaders across the district have created proficiency scales that represent the specific grade level learning targets, academic vocabulary, and identified the level of rigor of the learning targets, also known as Sandy noted earlier, the depth of knowledge or DOK. In addition, careful work has been implemented to ensure vertical articulation of the standards across grade levels, as well as identifying the priority standards that will be reported to families via the continuous progress report. And again, in this document, as teachers work through this, they will be able to find learning targets, the depth of knowledge, the academic vocabulary, priority standards, vertical articulation, proficiency scales. Then it also articulates what the STEM specialists are responsible responsible for, as well as classroom teachers, as they're color-coded throughout that.
So I just have a quick question. When you're saying across the district and the alignment, is that just at the elementary level, or did you also do the mapping into the middle level and up through the high school then too, right? So that's a different event.
Yeah.
Okay.
So my partner, Elida Kane, the Director of Secondary Teaching and Learning, she's doing similar work with 612.
Yep.
And then there's opportunities for us to articulate with the elementary and the middle level. For example, we're working on that with PE currently.
Yeah.
So right now, we're speaking specifically to the vertical alignment in K-5 as it relates to those
Yeah.
benchmarks. But thank you for the clarifying question,
Yeah,
Judy.
thank you.
All right. So in order to ensure a guaranteed and viable curriculum for all of our students across the system, the district science leadership team has developed what we call a common understanding of the key look-fors that represent best practice in science instruction. This is a rubric, is a tool that supports teachers in their self-reflection in their current practices, as well as future goal setting for themselves. In addition, this tool is utilized as a needs assessment by our STEM specialists, who also serve as integrationists and who coach and support our classroom teachers as they implement these new standards. We are extremely fortunate in this district to have full-time STEM specialists at the elementary level who not only provide that direct instruction that Paul had mentioned, but they also serve as integrationists where they collaborate with our classroom teachers by modeling, co-teaching, and coaching. And having these positions are crucial as we are moving forward with the implementation. Many times when we think of elementary, we usually think of generalists, where their bread and butter is literacy and math. And so we feel very fortunate to have these content specialists to come alongside our classroom teachers and help with those key shifts and those concepts moving forward. So this is our implementation timeline. The required full implementation of the Minnesota Academic Standards in Science is scheduled for the 24-25 school year. Since the Minnesota Comprehensive Assessments, otherwise known as the MCAs, are based on the standards, the Science MCA 4 will be implemented the spring of 2025 for grades 5, 8, and high school. Implementation dates for each of the content areas are set as a part of the rulemaking process. At the elementary level, the science MCAs in grade 5 really represent benchmarks in grades 3, 4, and 5. And so as a result, in order to properly prepare for the implementation of the MCA 4 in 2025, Lakeville is going to follow the elementary science standards implementation guideline that has been set forth by the Minnesota Department of Education. So what you see is a staggered implementation, and what will happen in the 22-23 school year is full implementation for grades K and 3, because if you think of those third graders, they will be fifth graders in 2025 when that MCA 4 comes online. And so we need to make sure that they are prepared when that assessment is there. And so that's why you see this staggered approach. And then the following school year, grades 1 and 4, and then grades 2 and 5 for that full implementation for that.
This slide, typically when we, in Sandy that leads this work, when we get into looking at standards and potentially adopting a new curriculum, teachers are usually hangry for just give me the stuff. And so the process that's led up to this, now we're getting to the materials. So as part of the science standards review process, the district, the Teaching and Learning, the Science Steering Committee, and the larger committee is engaging in conversations with other districts as well as conducting a number of field tests to narrow down the selection of potential district-wide core resources that will support this implementation of the new academic science standards. Teacher leaders from the district science leadership team have been playing a key role in conducting the field tests across our district. Their feedback from this process has been invaluable. In May, the full district science leadership team will be participating in informal presentations that will highlight each of the resources along with utilizing the feedback from the field test teachers in order to recommend a district-wide core resource for adoption. Included in this slide are the resources the district science leadership team is considering for adoption. Along with the staff, there have been parents and community members that have had the opportunity to review these resources or will have the opportunity to review these resources and provide feedback. And all the elementary staff may have access to additional information and feedback via the Elementary Teaching and Learning website, as well as this information has already gone out to the community in newsletters. This slide represents the rubric that's been developed for the team to be able to utilize as we're reviewing these different materials. So this is a screenshot of the science rubric that the district science leadership team will be utilizing as they evaluate and recommend district-wide core resources. The rubric provides criteria by which to measure how well lessons and units are designed to align with the expectations of the new academic science standards.
So what are the next steps for the district science leadership team? Well, they include finalizing what will be reported to families in the continuous progress report. And what will that look like moving forward is come next year in the 22-23, when you think about the implementation timeline, grades K and 3 will be reporting through a standards-based grading lens, just like we currently do in literacy and math. And then that will be onboarded as the subsequent years move forward. In addition, we'll be looking at assessment and pacing guide and scope and sequence development, and then implementation and alignment to our core resources. So at this time, we want to thank you for the opportunity to visit with you regarding our work. And we would be happy to stand for any questions, feedback, or comments that you might have for us.
Director Schmitz, yes.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. Thanks for presenting. My question is, once your resource adoption occurs, are the students and teachers limited to those resources, like the journals, the textbooks, whatever resources you're adopting?
Yeah, so those would be considered our core resource, our board-approved resources that would be available for our teachers to support the implementation of those science standards. At times, we need to have supplementary resources, Director Schmitz, because when we go through the next process, which is the direct alignment of the core resource to the benchmarks, sometimes we find that there are gaps, and especially when the state of Minnesota does not like to adopt the national standards. And so what we have found is that we have the NGSS had a benchmark that was in 5th grade, and Minnesota decided to put it in 1st grade. And so that makes it a little bit challenging for us, Director Schmitz. And so what that means is when we do that alignment, we have to determine where we might need to create units of study for those gaps, or where we might need to consider supplemental resources. But that will be the process come next year, so
Okay.
thank you.
And that would be on a system-wide level where you're implementing?
Yes, so
things
the
into-
progression of learning that Paul had shared, there's lots of columns on that spreadsheet and lots of tabs. And so that would be the next set of work where we take whatever the core resource is that we would recommend to the board, and then we would align those to the standards and then determine where those gaps are. And then that would be available for our teachers across the system.
Okay, and so if a student wanted to bring in a different type of learning material, would that be allowed if they're doing an experiment to prove a hypothesis, or are they limited to what is in the classroom?
Yeah, I think many times we need to think about the art and science of teaching, and many times we need to respond to what those learners' needs are, and then that differentiation piece. So certainly there could be opportunities where that might arise in the classroom.
Thank you.
Yes, Director Lind.
Three things. First, a comment. I can't think of a program that would be more successful with those three or those 5 items in them. Integration, collaboration, evidence-based, connection to the real world, and solving problems. That says it
Seems to
all.
fit for a lot of subjects, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I think it's great. Then I have a couple of questions. One, I know that the STEM specialist, I think in all the elementaries, meets with each class once a week. My question is, what are the expectations for the classroom teacher? Is it depend on grade level, how often they teach science? Is it once a week? Have you looked that far ahead?
Yeah, so they currently are providing direct instruction, which is also an opportunity for the teacher to have prep in the master schedule. And that
You're talking about STEM. I'm
Correct,
talking
STEM.
about the classroom teacher.
Could you repeat your question, Terry?
My question is, what are the expectations for the classroom teacher in teaching science once a week? Does it
Oh,
depend on
I'm sorry,
grade?
gotcha.
Okay.
So, yes. So on the orange framework that we have listed, the recommendation that comes from the National Association for Science Teachers is 45 to 60 minutes of science instruction per day. And so that also includes the time that the STEM specialists, because the STEM specialists do that direct instruction once a week for 50 minutes. And one of the pieces that we did at our most recent district science leadership team, and very thankful to the work of Paul Helberg, was really to develop a master schedule to see how do we get those recommended minutes, not only for science, but for literacy and for math, and how does that all fit within the course of the day. And then also looking at when are there opportunities to integrate science in maybe the ELAs, like the nonfiction benchmarks. And so we did actually a book study in the district science leadership team, because you're absolutely right, Terry, there isn't enough minutes of the day
There's not.
to be able to meet all those benchmarks. And so we've really been looking at very intentionally, how do we integrate specifically in the area of the ELAs, which nicely align, as I'd mentioned earlier, the claim evidence reasoning, the CER protocol, as well as math. So I thank you for that question.
Okay.
Can I
Yeah,
add
go
on
ahead,
to that?
Paul.
And then also, Director Lynn, the progression of learning also highlights what standards classroom teachers are responsible for covering, as
Right.
well as STEM specialists. So, but the STEM specialists have been I'll call them our resident experts for the last number of years. And so it's laid out nicely for classroom teachers to recognize what are the standards I'm responsible for as well.
That makes perfect sense.
Yes.
My last question I brought up at the TLC yesterday, because I remember the last adoption was a curriculum I won't name, but there was so many materials and boxes, and the big question for years was who's going to house those boxes, and number two, who's going to order all the materials that we use for those boxes. So that was a major challenge.
So we might house them at Director Lynn's garage. No.
Okay, good luck there.
Maybe you could learn science, Terry. They didn't have science back then.
I think you had a good answer for it, though.
Yeah, so the current FOSS kits are very large and cumbersome. That is not a resource that we're entertaining at this time. And then those consumables will be a big part of that science instruction, especially if we're going to meet those belief statements as you outlined, Director Lind. And so we will be working closely with the sites on how to support the ordering and the purchasing of those consumable resources.
I think it'll be easier, too, now that we actually have a STEM person in each building as full-time. They could help also.
Yeah, and they have been remarkable in this process.
Right.
And they really are taking a good portion, lion's share of these standards. So that is really helpful for the classroom teacher, especially in your prior question that you had asked.
Director
Thank you.
Anderson,
Thanks. Not to put you on the spot, but
is your microphone on?
yes, it's on. You always do that to me. You already had your one earlier. All right. Not to put you on the spot, but how are we, do you guys have a plan to integrate this for special ed programs and kids? I think it would be great. Because like when my kid was in Kid Zone, they would bring in a STEM specialist once a week, and he even enjoyed as much as he could cognitively. So I would just appreciate you consider, because there's a whole level of special ed kid, from very bright to, so.
Absolutely. We really need to be thinking of the diverse needs of all of our students, especially as you mentioned, special ed, but then also differentiating for our gifted learners as well, and thinking about that through an MTSS approach. So that is definitely part of our work when we think about how, and that is actually one of our look-fors on our resource rubric. How well does this resource differentiate for the varied needs that we have within our classroom? So thank you for that, Director
Yeah,
Anderson.
thank you.
Yes, Director Lewis.
I just would be hopeful if
Can you talk into microphone?
I'm sorry, thank you.
I thought Dave
If
might
you
tell
would
you
be
that,
able-
but I guess I'll have to.
If you'd be able,
I said this, but I'm still processing everything you're presenting. This new rollout is off of the new state standards for science.
Yes.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but they have not been approved yet, correct?
No, they have.
They have been approved. Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
At the state. Yes. Yes. So, yes, Director Richards.
So I just have to say that this is delightful for me as a person who has a master's in curriculum and instruction and has worked for the State Department on this stuff. I absolutely love it. I want to make sure to clarify for the board and for all of our viewing public, when we're talking about culturally responsive teaching, which I'm so excited to hear, that means that we're looking for that rigor, the relevance, the relationships, and the realness. And to see that really being embedded in this curriculum, like from the lens of the district, which we have to adopt the standards from the state, I'm just very encouraged by all of that. I am curious, my question is, I saw 5 resources that you're considering. How many are you looking to pilot?
So those 5 resources that you saw on the slide, we actually field tested all of those.
All of them, okay.
Yeah, and so I know that Paul gave a shout out, but really being in a pandemic, taking on all of that and willing and volunteering to be a field test teacher is incredible. And the feedback that they gave, it just gives me tingles. They were spot on and so professional in their recommendations and how we narrow those down. We held debriefing sessions with all of them. And if you aren't already proud of our educators, the work that they did in supporting us in narrowing down this is amazing. They know their stuff, and it was very clear during the debriefs that they are embedding these key shifts and concepts already.
So am I hearing you say that you are down to 1?
We have narrowed it down right now to 2 that we're looking at. One of them is Mystery Science, and the other one is Amplify. Just in the recent days and hours, we've been able to narrow down from the 5 to the 2. And it's really been based on that rubric that we are using. The big thing that we're finding is the alignment to the Minnesota standards is a challenge for us, a huge challenge, because we chose not to go with NGSS, and all major companies, who do they align to? And Minnesota put 4th grade standards in 2nd grade, 5th grade standards in 1st grade. And so it's not just as easy as shifting those units, because those units were developed developmentally for 10-year-olds, hard to shift to a 5-year-old. So yes, so we have narrowed it down to the 2, and we're excited for those formal presentations on May 10th to be able to make a recommendation to you as the board.
I'm also really excited to hear of the process that you looked at with the proficiencies and sharing common assessments around that. I'm very hopeful. I experienced the same thing in math, that there were just these huge gaps that we had to do a lot of collaborative work around making sure that we were backfilling what Minnesota decided was here, where Common Core was in a different place. With the 2 that you are looking at, so just to clarify, the final resource will be the K-5 resource.
Correct.
And the first go of it will be next year in grades.
So,
1 and 3.
yeah, so what we plan on doing.
Just those two, or will you
Correct.
adopt it
Well,
for all of it?
what we plan on doing, Director Richards, is in September, during workshop week, we would roll out that new resource. And we use kind of the language at the elementary soft rollout versus hard rollout. So we would have all of our teachers in utilizing the resource, but K and 3 would be expected for full implementation in a hard rollout, but our other grade levels would be dabbling in that, because it doesn't make sense to have people in an old resources versus a new resource. But we'll be putting a spotlight on each of those years with those grade levels and providing extra support through our district science leadership team.
Director Lewis?
Two things. Would you mind just taking a minute or two just to kind of explain how this integrates with what the processes of the state of Minnesota, reviewing the curriculum, and then how it comes to us and what we do? And then I have a follow-up question to that.
Yes, I'll try my best to do that as succinctly.
I know it gets a little confusing,
Yeah,
but
and so-
I think it would help our general public
Yeah.
understanding how it gets from this level to this level.
Yes. Thank you for that, Director Lewis. So every 10 years, there's a different review cycle for a different content area, which, by the way, makes it very challenging for elementary, because what does that mean? An elementary teacher, every year, now until 2027, will be implementing a new content area, which is different than our secondary folks, where they just teach science. You know, they just get a cycle every 10 years. And so the state of Minnesota goes through a process themselves where they have representation from districts, from higher ed, that come together and then determine what those key shifts are and what those benchmarks are and what those anchor standards are. Then it goes through a rulemaking process, and then it comes to us at a district level. So the what of the standards is what is expected at a state level. So we don't have a choice in that matter, Director Lewis. That's what's brought down forth to us. The how we implement that becomes a local decision, but the what of the standards is determined by the Department of Education.
I would like to interject that you can get involved. For anyone who's interested, you can contact the Department of Education, and when they're in their process, there's public hearings, and there's even potential to be part of committees for the standards review process and when they're tweaking it.
Yep, they have town hall meetings. In fact, the math is currently in their first draft of their standards, and they just recently held a town hall meeting. I think it was in February for their first draft. So thank you for that, Director
Director
Richards.
Lewis, you had a follow-up?
I do. It kind of speaks to what you're saying. So then when it comes down to us, we do the how, is what you said. Is there going to be anything significant in how we're going to be presenting this learning to the children, to the students? Because I remember several years ago when we were implementing and going through our curriculum cycles, we would buy little kits, and we would have to replenish those every year for their experiments and for each of their learnings. Can you expound on that just a wee bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're absolutely right. When we think about these key shifts and these conceptual changes, it's really about those three dimensions that Paul had mentioned, with the science and engineering practices, the cross-cutting concepts, and the core disciplinary ideas, and then introducing it in an inquiry phenomenon base. So that will be a change for our staff, and really looking at that shift. And then, because we really want it to be relevant in real life, there will be those experiments, as you mentioned, or those kits and those hands-on pieces as well embedded within there.
I just want to support what you're saying about how this is for our elementary teachers, because the different curriculum areas are reviewed every so many years. I mean, it's always an ongoing thing, but I think you're absolutely correct, and I don't think people realize that with many of our elementary teachers being more generalist and foundational in what they're learning, it's like every year they're getting all new curriculum to implement, whether this year it's science, next year it might be math, the next year after that it might be social studies. I mean, I think it follows that, and I don't think people always appreciate the complexities of that. Whereas when you get to the upper grades and you're dealing with one subject matter, you only have to do, the science teacher, they do it for a year, I mean, and then then the history will be the next, and then English or whatever, or literature will be the next. So it's not one teacher at the upper levels having to ingratiate all of that. And so I think we need to
Thank you. We
that.
appreciate your input, and we look forward to you coming back to us in May. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
And then the recommended action is the resolution of the Paraprofessionals Appreciation Week. Dr. McDonald.
Good evening,
Good
Chair
evening.
Kelleher, members of the board, Superintendent Bauman. Always a pleasure to be here, especially when I get to share with you some resolutions recognizing amazing people that work in this system that aren't always recognized. So I will start with our Paraprofessionals Appreciation Week, as you noted. Lakeville Area Schools recognizes April 18th through 22nd, 2022 as Paraprofessionals Appreciation Week. Our paraprofessionals are essential to the mission of our district and to the success of our students. This week, we celebrate our thanks and gratitude for these staff members. Whereas paraprofessionals provide a variety of services and supports to help our students achieve success, these essential professionals collaborate with teachers and other district staff to provide a quality educational experience to all students. Whereas paraprofessionals provide essential services within our schools, including support for instruction in the most inclusive setting and assistance with the social and daily care needs of individual students, as well as numerous other tasks that contribute to educational success. Whereas the support and services provided by our paraprofessionals are an integral to student achievement, resulting in better, more effective schools where all students are welcome and safe. Whereas Lakeville Area Schools is committed to excellence in education and recognizes the important role paraprofessionals play in ensuring educational success. Therefore, let it be resolved, the Board of Education hereby extends its appreciation to all Lakeville Area Schools paraprofessionals for supporting the education of our students and declares April 18th through 22nd, 2022, to be Paraprofessionals Appreciation Week in Lakeville Area Schools.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion
Thanks, Terry.
by Director Lind. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second by Director Anderson. Any further discussion?
I'd just like to thank all the paras that have been essential in my son's learning since kindergarten. They're vital to the special ed programs.
We have
Sorry, I didn't talk into the microphone there.
We have incredible paras across the district, and it's just wonderful the work that they do. And I don't know what our teachers and staff would do without them.
No.
So, all right, we have a motion by Director Lind and a second by Director Anderson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Resolution for Volunteer Appreciation Week, speaking about people across the district that we don't know what we would do without.
This is so wonderful. I think, there's that old saying, you don't realize what you have until it's gone. And when we went through COVID and we weren't able to bring people into our system, we really, really missed having those fabulous volunteers around to help support our work. They are an amazing group of people, and they also do a wide variety of things across the district. And honestly, we could not do it without them. So I'm happy to proceed with the resolution. Lakeville Area Schools recognizes April 18th through 22nd as Volunteer Appreciation Week. Volunteers provide essential support to our over 11,500 Lakeville area students and their families and over 1,500 employees. This week, we celebrate our thanks and gratitude for these essential community members. Whereas the week of April 18th through 22nd is designated National Volunteer Week to recognize the hard work, dedication, and passion of volunteers through our nation. Whereas volunteers here in Lakeville area provide essential support to our students through generous donations of time, money, and talent. Whereas volunteers serve on our boards, task forces, and committees to help move our mission forward. Whereas volunteers are motivated by the simple satisfaction of helping our students and fostering a sense of community and pride within our schools and our district. Therefore, let it be resolved, the Board of Education hereby extends its appreciation to all Lakeville area volunteers for supporting the education and success of our students and declares April 18th through 22nd, 2022 to be Volunteer Appreciation Week in Lakeville area schools.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
And a second?
Second.
And okay, we have a motion by Director Anderson and a second by Director Schmitz. Any further discussion? Well, I'll tell you, I know we missed them, but I think they missed being in the schools too. They really have a passion for the work that they do.
Sure do.
So, all right, we have a motion by Director Anderson, a second by Director Schmidt. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And the last resolution is the Administrative Support Appreciation Week.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Chair Kelleher. Another group of people who really represent our district and are the face of our district and the first point of contact for many people who choose to come and to our schools for a variety of reasons. Lakeville Area Schools recognizes April 25th through 29th as Administrative Support Professionals Appreciation Week. Our administrative support professionals are essential to keeping our district operating, which supports the success of our students. This week, we celebrate our thanks and gratitude for these vital staff members. Whereas National Administrative Professionals Day is being celebrated on April 27th, 2022, whereas our administrative support professionals serve several roles in our school buildings and district offices, whereas these professionals are often the first point of contact for families, students, and staff, and help create a welcoming environment. Whereas our administrative support professionals carry out essential functions to keep our school and district operating so we can fulfill the mission of our district and the success of our students. Therefore, let it be resolved, the Board of Education hereby extends its appreciation to all Lakeville area schools administrative support professionals for supporting the education of our students and declares April 25th through 29th, 2022 to be Administrative Support Professionals Appreciation Week in Lakeville area schools.
All right, is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Director Lewis, is there a second?
I second.
Second by Director Richards. Any further discussion?
My dad was a custodian, and when I became a teacher, he said, it really doesn't matter about the principal. It matters about the first person that you see. That's who really runs the school. So I just want to give them all a shout out because that's who really runs the school. No disrespect to all the principals out there. Sorry about that.
I totally agree.
Yeah, look, we have a recovering principal agreeing with me up here.
I won't let Paul and
totally
Terry
agree.
beat you
Paul,
up
you
in the
put up a
parking
good
lot.
front.
That's our best
All
kept
right.
secret.
Awesome. So we have a motion by Director Lewis and a second by Director Richards. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Wonderful. Thank you so much for all the
Thank
wonderful
you.
recognitions. And then the last recommended action for this evening is Aaron Casper with the approval of the 2022-2023 medical insurance rates. Good evening.
Good evening, Chair Kelleher, directors, and Superintendent Bauman. Let me get. Okay, perfect. Yes. All right, thank you. Okay. So this is going to, Director Richards, this is going to be the opposite of curriculum. So,
I was a math teacher though, so I like the
well,
numbers
that's-
too.
Okay,
Yeah.
good, good. So you've been able to review maybe. So what I wanted to do is start out by just really talking about a little bit of history here at Lakeville. So I'm going to talk through the insurance models, the RFP results that were in your packet, and then talk about our renewal, which is going to be effective July 1st, 2022, and then some planned performance, just to give you an update kind of how we're running, and that's going to be supportive of our renewal position. So real quick on the insurance models. We're currently in a self-insured model, and we were for a long time fully insured. So if we go back to 2015, we were in a fully insured environment. And what we did is we toggled back and forth for approximately 4 years until 2019 when we kind of flipped a switch and moved to a self-insured environment. So in a fully insured environment, really what we were doing is paying a set risk premium okay, and then the insurance carrier, whomever that was, and we toggled between Blue Cross and Health Partners kind of every other year there. We would pay them that premium, and then they would insure our risk. So if we had more claims than we were paying in premium, they wouldn't do as well, right? But if we had less claims than what we were paying in premium, they would have a profit, okay? So back in 2019, we made the switch, and the reason we made the switch is it made sense for us to be fully insured for as long as possible, because what they were doing is buying our business essentially for 4 years. So during that 4-year period of time, from 15 to 19, we had a net zero increase over that period of time, okay? In 2019, the fully insured marketplace decided that they were no longer going to buy our business, and we were looking at a double-digit increase at that point in time. So what we did is we actually gave ourselves that double-digit increase, a few points below, and we were going to then go ahead and mitigate our risk. So even in that fully insured environment, we were paying as a part of that premium some protections for them, right? So they would have their max cost protected. Those are the same things that we're doing in the self-insured environment when you see in the packet, or as I talk through tonight, some administrative costs, stop loss fees specific, and then aggregate, so the maximum protection. So to assure the board here, we have protection in our plan as we assume that risk back in 2019. So the advantages of the self-insurance really is managing that risk, giving ourselves flexibility as an entity, a plan sponsor, providing full transparency, because in that fully insured environment, we're not able to see the level of detail that we can actually see in a self-insured environment. And then finally, the goal is to have long-term financial stability in the plan. So I'm just going to walk through. I'm not a big guy on just going through the PowerPoint slides here or the points here. So this one's going to be a little bit more of that. So we're required under Minnesota statute to go out to bid, formal bid, every 2 years under the Health Insurance Transparency Act. We're a little different since we're self-insured. We've got a little bit more leeway, but essentially what we're doing is we're going out and checking the market to ensure that, A, we are competitive, and that the Public Employees Insurance Program, or PEEP, has an opportunity to bid on our business. We did that. We went out and we received 5 proposals, 4 of which were competitive. It came down to 2 finalists, Blue Cross Blue Shield and Health Partners, which ironically, though, those were the 2 carriers that were kind of trading off and toggling back through 15 through 2019. And through our Representative Insurance Committee, which is a recommending committee to administration to bring to the board, so not a decision-making committee, but a recommending, they unanimously supported remaining with the incumbent, which is Blue Cross Blue Shield, for our 2022 renewal period. With the addition of that renewal, we are going to be rolling out, effective July 1st, a new program, a value-added program through Teladoc, which is called Healthiest You. That program specifically is going to be able to provide a unlimited, zero-cost access through virtual care for general medicine, so general type things, mental health, which is huge. We've had a ramp up in claims here at this district and throughout the state in K through 12 education, dermatology, nutrition, physical therapy, as well as second opinions should an individual member have a need there. So this is a huge advantage. The value add comes out to just a little over $170,000 in terms of what this is. And this is 100% claims redirection. So if we can go ahead and get, as an example, $100,000 of services through this program, it's not going to hit our medical plan, right? That's going to come right off the top. So these are the types of things that we definitely want to take a look at and do. One thing before I go on is that I mentioned the mental health. We've seen a rising tide in mental health claims, across the board. The biggest thing that I think we're going to be able to have as an advantage with this Healthiest You option for our members here is going to be access. So right now, it can take anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks to be able to, depending on the condition, so I'm making a general statement, to be able to actually come in and see a practitioner, a mental health practitioner. Healthiest You guarantees a 7-day access point. So So for in those instances when people need to have the care, we're going to be able to provide it to them, hopefully within that time frame that they indicated. So our planned performance, as I mentioned, we made that transition back in 2019. For our renewal for 7/1 of 22, we're going to be looking at an 8.2% increase. And in the aggregate, that represents right around $2 million for a group our size. We basically compared our self-insured plan at the recommendation of the insurance committee, and we compared that to a fully insured environment. And that fully insured environment would have yielded over a 30% increase if we would have still been in that position. So we definitely feel very, very good about being where we're at. And PEEP responded with a proposal that was just slightly below 36% in the aggregate total. Now, these are aggregate numbers, so this doesn't break out employee contributions based on the various bargaining units, so just in the aggregate. It was so much so that we put this point in twice. The other thing that about the self-insured environment is that I talked a little bit about the gain and the loss between the two models. From our perspective here, we have what's called Fund 20, where we're able to put, I would say, surplus dollars into our Fund 20 in reserve to help us mitigate future increases or go ahead and go forward with programs such as Health ESU if, in fact, we were purchasing those on our own, if we decided to do that. So anything that would be available for the member. We've got a soft target within the first 4 to 5 years. We're finishing up year 3 of around 20 to 25%. We're sitting right around 14% as of right now, as of today. So we're approaching that target. And then finally, on our planned performance. So how did we derive where we were? When we do renewals, all carriers take a look at 24 months of data, right? The most recent 12 months and then the previous 12 months. So as you can see here, we did have an uptick in our claims in the most recent 12-month period of time. But then we also had what we would call claims capture. So I mentioned some protections that we are currently purchasing through our plan. We have what's called a $200,000 specific stop loss level. So any claim over $200,000 is picked up by an insurance contract. So we're on the hook for the first $200,000. Anything over that is going to be covered by the insurance. What we would tell you is that, yes, we've had a group this size. We've certainly had some high claims, right? So we're able to mitigate that through the specific stop loss. But we've also seen in Lakeville specifically kind of just an overall increase in total claims across the board. And we would lean on the more experienced side of our staff. So that has an impact in how we access claims. The more experienced we are, the more often and frequency we typically visit the doctor and have medical care. The other portion that I would kind of end with, and then certainly open it up to any questions that you may have, is our pharmacy. Pharmacy overall is rising at the highest percentage increase. Specifically, when you take a look at specialty pharmacy, so this is kind of where the new drugs are coming out, but really can have the difference between life and death, right, for our members. Those costs are increasing anywhere to 20 to 40%. So in this most recent RFP, what we did is we asked for proposals that would indicate price points for the district to actually receive the pharmacy rebates from the carrier. And the more expensive the pharmacy, the bigger the rebate. Or would we continue on and have the carrier retain that, which there's a direct inverse correlation between our administrative fees. Our administrative fees go up if we're keeping the pharmacy rebate. If we're letting the carrier keep the pharmacy rebate, our administration fees go down. Okay, so there's kind of an opposite correlation there. So effective this renewal, we are actually going to target and we are going to be receiving and holding onto those pharmacy rebates in all the models that we saw, well, in our model, and as well as the carrier responses. We've targeted that $800,000 range. So that's kind of where our break even was in terms of that administrative cost versus the retaining the rebate. We actually, based on the proposals that we saw, think that we're going to be able to probably beat that in that over that $800,000 mark. But that's something that I could come back and tell you. Were we right? A year from now. So that's really it in a nutshell. We're still in a good position at 14% funded. And we just are trying to deploy some strategies to go ahead and be there for our members, essentially across the district.
All right, so first of all, we'll make a motion, and, well, I guess, are there any other questions?
I do have a question. When you're talking about the healthiest you, is that all then virtual appointments, or is that just the access to be able to get in to see someone? Because sometimes that 7 days might be a long time.
Yeah, so to answer your question, Director Lewis, that is correct. It is all virtual care, but it does not preclude an individual member, should they elect to go through the virtual environment first, to kind of save their own out-of-pocket expense.
Okay.
If they needed to have a referral into a facility for a one-on-one or a face-to-face, that would be able to be provided. And those practitioners would direct that participant to do that.
But they would have to wait 7 days to be able to get that?
So they would have to wait. What we're saying is that the window for an individual to be able to see a practitioner upon first, let's say, going into the seeking care through the program is no longer than 7 days. It could be a day. It could be 3 days. So it could be quicker, but they're saying no longer than 7 days, as opposed to if we're looking for a brick and mortar type experience, it could be what we're seeing kind of in the metro anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks, and that simply is a supply and demand. There are a lot more individuals seeking out their care, which we want, but there's just not enough practitioners to be able to be on a one-on-one right for them in that moment. Did I answer your question?
I think you did. I'm just thinking, does this still allow for urgent care and all of that?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. This program does not replace, and it's 100% voluntary. So the members, whether it's our employees or it's their dependents, they can choose what's the best fit for them and their particular circumstances and how they're accessing their care.
So the motion on the table is for.
Real quick question.
Yep, I'm just saying the motion on the table is for the approval of the 2022-2023 medical insurance rates. So that's what we're, yep.
Okay. So is the virtual part, is that new to the program, or if you said it, I'm sorry? Or you had that in past?
Yeah, so there were different virtual options in the past, but this is really going to be a true no cost to the member,
Okay.
And a value add provided by Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, so is there a motion for the approval of the rates?
So moved.
All right, we have a motion, or we have motion by Director Lind. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Schmitz. And now, is there any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair Kelleher and
Yep.
directors and Superintendent Baumann.
Thank you. And Superintendent Report.
Yeah, just two items. First, we spent quite a bit of the weekend, and our crisis management team spent a lot of time helping and supporting Lakeville North in the loss of life situation. I was over there earlier today. Principal Booty had the staff marshaled in the lecture hall. I got a chance to speak to them. The purpose of the meeting was to talk through and for Lisa Holding to go through some mitigation and support functions that staff can provide to our students. We unfortunately have fortunately and unfortunately that we have to actually put it into practice, but we do have a comprehensive support system. We did have counseling support for our students over these past few days and for our staff. So just wanted to share that with the board if you weren't aware of all the other things that we've had to do since late Friday. And we'll continue to do that for the next few weeks here at the school. But hats off to our staff there. they, they have to deal with it, and they are. And supporting our students and families is also a pretty important part of dealing with a loss of life situation for somebody so young. So the second thing I just want to share, I spent an hour with Dr. Van Zyl today, and we will continue to do knowledge transfer meetings between now and the end of June. So that process is fully engaged now. I just want to make sure you're aware of that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And with that, is there a motion for adjournment?
I'll move.
We have a motion by Director Schmitz.
I'll second.
We have a second by Director Anderson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And we thank you for joining our meeting and being engaged. And please note that these meetings are also viewed live on cable channel 188, live streamed on the district website, and watched on demand via the recorded meetings posted on the district website. And our next regularly scheduled meeting is April 26th. Thank you and good evening.